The Shire is quiet. The lanterns are glowing. Welcome back to the Hobbit's hideout, where stories grow like leaves on the party tree. Hello, guys. Today we find ourselves caught between curiosity and consequence, where even the most innocent evening can change everything we thought we knew about our peaceful world. Before we wander the Shire together, let's pause, take a long, deep breath, and let the weight of your day melt away like morning mist on the party tree. You've earned this quiet moment just for you. Imagine the soft grass beneath your feet, the smell of fresh-baked bread drifting from nearby windows, the gentle evening light painting everything in shades of gold and amber. If any part of this tale makes you smile or brings you a sense of home, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Now, let me paint the scene for you. The evening settles over Hobbiton like a hand-stitched quilt, familiar and comforting in its well-worn patterns. Golden lamplight spills from countless round windows, each one a beacon of warmth in the gathering dusk. The cobbled paths wend between the hillside homes like gentle streams, worn smooth by generations of bare hobbit feet, padding back and forth on the business of daily life. You can smell the mingled aromas that make up the very essence of home. Wood smoke curling from stone chimneys, the yeasty sweetness of bread cooling on windowsills, honeysuckle climbing the garden gates, and somewhere in the distance, the rich scent of pipe tobacco drifting from the Green Dragon Tavern. A fiddle plays a melody as old as the hills themselves, accompanied by the soft murmur of voices, and occasional bursts of laughter that speak of friends gathering to share the day as small adventures. The air is soft against your skin, carrying the promise of a clear night ahead. Stars are beginning to emerge in the deepening sky. First one, then two, then scattered handfuls of silver light that will soon carpet the heavens with their ancient patterns. A barn owl calls from somewhere in the old forest, its voice a gentle reminder that the world extends far beyond the boundaries of your comfortable village. You've stepped out from your own cozy hole this evening on the simplest of errands, wicker baskets swinging gently from your arm. Earlier today, while tending your garden in the warm afternoon sun, you'd encountered Mrs. Bracegirdle on her way to the market. Her cheeks were flushed with the satisfaction of a woman whose apple trees had outdone themselves this season. "My dear," she'd said, adjusting the heavy basket on her own arm, "you simply must come by this evening and take some of these apples. The trees are practically groaning under the weight of them, and there's far more than our family could ever use. The early varieties are perfect right now, sweet as honey and crisp as autumn air. I won't take no for an answer." Her smile had been warm and genuine, the kind that makes every hobbit in the Shire feel like cherished family. Mrs. Bracegirdle had a reputation for the finest apple tarts in 3 villages, and her generosity was as legendary as her baking. You'd accepted gratefully, already imagining the pies and preserves that would grace your pantry shelves in the weeks to come. The path to the Bracegirdle homestead winds through some of the quieter parts of Hobbiton, where the lanes grow narrower and the hedgerows taller. Ancient oak trees spread their gnarled branches overhead like protective umbrellas, their leaves whispering secrets to each other in the gentle evening breeze. Wildflowers peek out from the grass verges, late blooming asters and goldenrod that glow like tiny suns in the fading light. Your bare feet know every stone and root along this familiar route. You've walked it countless times in all seasons and all weathers, sometimes in the bright company of friends, sometimes alone with your thoughts. Tonight feels different somehow, though you can't quite put your finger on why. There's a quality to the air, a tension that reminds you of the moments before a summer thunderstorm, when the very atmosphere seems to hold its breath. The usual evening sounds seem muted, as if someone has thrown a blanket over the Shire. Even your own footsteps sound softer than they should, muffled by something more than just the moss growing between the cobblestones. It's as though the entire world is listening to something you haven't yet heard, waiting for something you can't yet see. As you round the familiar bend near the old watermill, movement in your peripheral vision catches your attention. Through a gap in the tall hawthorn hedgerow that borders Farmer Sandyman's wheat field, you glimpse shapes that don't belong to the peaceful evening landscape. Two figures stand in the open field beyond, and even at this distance, you can tell they're far taller than any hobbit. Your steps slow without conscious thought, curiosity overriding the voice in your head that suggests you should simply continue on your way. These are clearly not ordinary travelers passing through on the east-west road. They stand apart from each other with a careful distance that speaks of wariness, perhaps even mistrust, despite what appears to be a planned meeting. One figure is draped in robes of gray that seem to shimmer with their own inner light, catching and reflecting the last rays of the setting sun. The other wears white garments so pure they appear almost luminous against the darkening sky, as if woven from moonbeams and starlight. Both carry tall staffs that gleam with more than just polished wood, and both possess an aura of power that makes the hair on your arms stand on end even at this distance. Your practical hobbit nature wars with your curiosity, but curiosity wins, as it so often does. You find yourself crouching behind the thick hedge, your basket set carefully on the grass beside you. The voices of the two figures carry on the still evening air, deep and resonant, speaking words that seem to carry weight far beyond their simple sounds. At first, their conversation remains mostly a low murmur, like distant thunder rolling across the hills on a summer evening. You strain to listen, but most of their words are lost in the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant sounds of Hobbiton settling into its evening rhythms. Occasionally, a phrase rises above the general murmur, carrying on the wind like a bird taking flight. The gray-robed figure gestures toward the south with his staff, and his voice, when it rises enough for you to catch fragments, carries a note of deep concern that makes your stomach flutter with unease. Words drift to you on the evening breeze, growing stronger each day, ... double quotes, and the signs are unmistakable, ... double quotes, and something that sounds distinctly like can no longer be contained or ignored, ... The response from the white-robed figure seems to carry disagreement, his tone measured but firm in its opposition. You catch glimpses of phrases that make little immediate sense. Patience has always been our greatest virtue, ... double quotes, and too soon to take such drastic action. His staff, you notice as he raises it to emphasize a point, is different from his companions, more ornate, with what appears to be a crystalline head that pulses with its own soft, rhythmic light. A twig snaps beneath your shifting knee, the sound sharp as a whip crack in the quiet evening. Both figures turn toward your hiding place, with movements so swift and coordinated they might have been dancers performing a well-rehearsed routine. For a heart-stopping moment that seems to stretch into eternity, you're certain you've been discovered. The gray wizard's eyes seem to pierce through hedge and shadow alike, as if he possesses the ability to see through solid matter to the very truth beneath. Your heart hammers against your ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. Every instinct screams at you to run, to abandon your basket and flee back to the safety of your hole, to pretend this moment never happened. But your legs seem to have turned to water, and breathing feels like trying to swallow honey through a reed. After what feels like several lifetimes compressed into heartbeats, the gray figure turns back to his companion, and their conversation continues in even lower, more cautious tones. You remain frozen in place, hardly daring to breathe, every muscle in your body tense with the effort of remaining perfectly still. As the minutes crawl by with agonizing slowness, the fragments you manage to overhear begin to form a pattern, like pieces of a vast and troubling puzzle assembling themselves in your mind. There is talk of stirrings in the Far East, and ancient evils that were never truly destroyed, and something called the Ring that seems to carry terrible and weighty significance whenever it's mentioned. The gray wizard speaks of signs and portents appearing in the very fabric of the world, while the white one counsels measured response and the wisdom of ages. Their disagreement seems to run deeper than simple tactical differences, touching on fundamental questions of when and how to act in the face of growing danger. But it's what comes next that transforms your world completely, shattering your peaceful evening like a stone thrown through a window. The White Wizard's voice rises just enough for you to hear his words with crystal clarity. The ring is no longer lost to the world, Gandalf. My sources in many lands confirm it has been found, and it rests far closer to us than you might think comfortable. The question that now faces us is whether we can control what comes next, or whether events will control us. A name hits you like a physical blow. Gandalf, even isolated as the Shire is from the wider world, that name carries legends with it. Stories whispered by the oldest grandmothers on the darkest nights of winter. Tales of a wizard who walks between the world of mortals and a realm of powers beyond normal understanding. To learn that such a figure stands mere yards away, discussing matters that could affect your very existence, leaves you feeling as though the ground beneath your feet has suddenly become as insubstantial as morning mist. The ring. That single word carries with it the weight of the oldest and most frightening stories ever told around hobbit hearths. Rings of power, forged in ages so distant they seem more like myths than history, capable of great good or terrible evil, depending entirely on the nature of the hand that wields them. You've always assumed such things belonged safely in the realm of stories, no more real than dragons or talking trees. Gandalf's response comes swift and sharp, cutting through the evening air like a blade. Control? My old friend, there is no controlling what has been set in motion. The very idea that we might direct such forces shows how little you understand what we truly face. If what you say is true, then even the Shire itself may soon find itself in mortal peril. These good folk know nothing of the darkness that stirs beyond their borders, and their innocence is both their greatest strength and their most dangerous weakness. Your blood seems to turn to ice water in your veins. The Shire in peril? Your people, your neighbors, your family and friends. All the good folk who've never hurt anyone, never wanted anything more than to tend their gardens and share good meals with those they love. The very idea seems impossible, like suggesting that the sun might choose not to rise tomorrow morning. Saruman, for now you know both their names, responds with what sounds like bitter amusement. His laugh is cold as wind blowing through a winter graveyard. The hobbits? They are of no consequence in the greater scheme of what's coming. When the time arrives for action, they will serve the greater purpose, as will all things and all peoples. Order must be maintained at all costs, even if that order requires ... sacrifice from those who cannot understand the necessity of their contribution. The word hangs in the evening air like a sword suspended over everything you hold dear. Sacrifice, your people, your home, your entire way of life, spoken of as if they were pieces on some vast game board, to be moved or removed at the whim of powers beyond their comprehension. The safety you've always taken for granted, the peace that has surrounded every hobbit from birth to death like a protective embrace, suddenly feels as fragile as spider silk in a strong wind. Gandalf's response comes so swiftly it overlaps with Saruman's final words. I will not stand by and see the Shire used as a pawn in anyone's game, not even yours, old friend. There are other ways to face what's coming, paths that don't require the innocent to pay for the mistakes and ambitions of those who consider themselves mighty and wise. Innocent? Saruman's voice carries a note of bitter amusement that makes your skin crawl. None will be innocent in what's coming, Gandalf the Grey. The ring has chosen its bearer, and that bearer will either serve the light or serve the darkness, willing or not. The hobbits may think themselves removed from such weighty matters, safe in their little holes with their afternoon teas and their evening pipes, but the ring cares nothing for their gardens and their comfortable routines. Every word feels like another stone added to a growing weight in your chest. You want nothing more than to flee from this place, to run back to your warm hole and pretend this conversation never happened, to return to a world where your biggest concern was whether Mrs. Bracegirdle's apples would make better pies or preserves. But your feet seem rooted to the earth as surely as the ancient oak trees, your body frozen by the sheer magnitude of what you're hearing. The conversation continues, but the individual words begin to blur together in your mind like watercolors running in the rain. There is talk of armies gathering in lands whose names are spoken only in whispers, and ancient alliances that may no longer hold when tested, and the will of powers greater than any who walk this Middle-earth. The two wizards seem to be planning something momentous, or perhaps arguing against plans already set in motion by others. It becomes increasingly clear that Saruman believes decisive action must be taken soon, while Gandalf counsels patience and caution. But beneath their tactical disagreement runs a deeper current, something that makes your skin crawl with a foreboding you can't name. Saruman speaks of necessary changes and new orders that will bring stability to a chaotic world, while Gandalf grows visibly more troubled by his companion's words with each passing moment. The full moon chooses this moment to rise over the Shire, casting silver light across the field where the two wizards stand. For the first time, you can see their faces clearly, and what you see there makes your heart sink like a stone thrown into deep water. Gandalf's expression is grave, lined with worry and a deep, abiding sorrow that speaks of burdens too heavy for any one person to bear alone. But Saruman, there is something in his eyes that doesn't belong in the face of one who should be a guardian of all that is good and innocent in the world. A coldness, a calculating quality that speaks of decisions already made and consequences already accepted, regardless of who might be hurt in the process. It is the look of someone who has gazed too long into dark places and allowed some of that darkness to take root in his own heart. The meeting seems to be drawing toward its conclusion. Both wizards straighten to their full, impressive height, their staffs glowing more brightly in the moonlight. The very air around them seems to shimmer with barely contained power, and you can feel the hair on your arms and neck standing on end despite the warmth of the evening. Saruman speaks what seem to be final words, and they chill you to the very bone. The ring will surface soon, Gandalf, whether we will it or not. The signs are unmistakable, and my sources are rarely wrong in such matters. When it does emerge from whatever hiding place has sheltered it these long years, we must be ready to guide its bearer toward the proper choice. The Shire has served its purpose as a hiding place, a sanctuary removed from the troubles of the wider world. Now it must serve a greater purpose in the grand design. Gandalf's reply is partially lost in a sudden gust of wind that sets the hedge rustling around you, but his posture speaks volumes. He turns partially away from Saruman, and for a moment that seems to stretch into eternity, his gaze sweeps across the hedgerow, where you crouch in terrified hiding. You press yourself as low as you can manage, heart hammering against your ribs like a desperate prisoner beating against cell bars. But there is something in Gandalf's look that surprises you more than anything else that has happened in this most extraordinary of evenings. Rather than anger at your eavesdropping or concern about what you might have overheard, there's something that almost looks like recognition, understanding, as if he not only knows you're there, but doesn't particularly mind your presence. More than that, as if your being there might somehow be part of a larger pattern he can perceive, but you cannot. Then, as suddenly as they appeared in your peaceful evening, both figures begin to fade. Not walking away like ordinary travelers, but actually becoming translucent, like morning mist touched by the first rays of sunlight. The process is gradual at first, then accelerating, until within the space of a few heartbeats, they re nothing more than silver shadows against the moonlit field. Another moment, and they're gone entirely, leaving only empty grass swaying in the gentle night breeze. You remain crouched behind the hedge for a very long time after their departure, trying to convince yourself that what you witnessed was real and not some elaborate dream or flight of fancy brought on by too much cheese before bed. But the ache in your knees from kneeling on the hard ground, and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco in the air, somehow both familiar and utterly foreign, confirmed that this was no dream. The familiar sights and sounds of the Shire continue around you, seemingly unchanged by what has just transpired. A dog barks somewhere in the distance, its voice carrying clearly in the still air. The old windmill continues its slow, patient creaking as its blades catch the night breeze. An owl hoots from its perch in the old forest, beginning its nightly hunt with a soft call that speaks of wild places and ancient wisdom. But everything feels different now, as if you're seeing your homeland through a window rather than standing in the middle of it. The peace you've always taken for granted now seems as fragile as an eggshell, the safety you've never questioned, as ephemeral as morning dew. You've been given a glimpse behind the curtain of ordinary existence, and what you've seen there has changed everything. When you finally rise on legs that shake like leaves in a storm, your forgotten basket still lies in the grass beside you. The apples that had seemed so important just hours ago now feel like relics from another age, from another life when your biggest concern was the simple pleasure of good fruit transformed into better preserves. The walk home feels endless, though you know every step of the familiar path by heart. Every shadow now could hide watching eyes. Every rustle in the hedgerow might herald the approach of those stirrings in the east that Gandalf spoke of with such evident concern. The comfortable familiarity of Hobbiton's winding lanes now seems like an elaborate mask, hiding truths too terrible for its innocent inhabitants to comprehend. You pause at your own garden gate, looking back at the round green door that has welcomed you home thousands of times before. The brass knob gleams warmly in the light from your front lamp, polished smooth by generations of hobbit hands, turning it in welcome or farewell. Inside, your fire still burns low, but steady in the stone hearth. Your favorite armchair still holds the impression of your body from this morning's reading, and your well-stocked pantry still contains enough food to feed a family of 6 for a week or more. But you are no longer the same hobbit who left this place with an empty basket and an untroubled mind just a few hours ago. You carry now a burden that no one else in the Shire shares, the knowledge that their peaceful world stands balanced on the edge of a knife, that forces beyond their understanding or imagination are moving in the darkness beyond their borders, and that somewhere, possibly very close indeed, someone carries a ring that could change everything they've ever known. The night air carries the scent of jasmine from your neighbor's garden, mixed with the lingering warmth of bread from the bakery 3 holes down the lane. Normal scents, comfortable scents, the olfactory signature of home and safety, and all the simple pleasures that make life worth living. But now they seem precious in a way they never have before, as if you're experiencing them for the first time, or perhaps the last. You let yourself into your home, noting how the familiar creak of the hinges sounds different tonight, more like a sigh than a greeting. The hallway stretches before you, lined with hooks that hold your everyday cloak and your second-best hat, your walking stick and the canvas bag you use for market days. Everything exactly as you left it, yet somehow transformed by what you now know about the world beyond these walls. In your sitting room, the fire has indeed burned low, reduced to glowing embers that paint the familiar furniture in shifting patterns of red and gold. Your books line their shelves in perfect order, their leather bindings gleaming in the firelight. Your favorite mug sits on the small table beside your chair, still bearing the faint ring where you set down your morning tea. The very picture of domestic tranquility, unmarked by any hint of the momentous events you've witnessed. You settle into your chair by the dying fire, but sleep feels as distant as the misty mountains. Every time you close your eyes, you see Saruman's cold smile and hear his casual words about sacrifice and the greater good. You think of your neighbors sleeping peacefully in their beds throughout Hobbiton and Bywater and Tuckborough, dreaming of tomorrow's meals and garden work and friendly gossip, with no idea that their very existence has been called into question by those who claim to protect the wider world. But gradually, as the hours pass and the night settles into its deepest quiet, Another feeling begins to replace the fear and shock that have dominated your thoughts. It is something you recognize from the oldest stories your grandmother used to tell by the fire on winter nights. Not the courage of knights and kings, but the quiet bravery of ordinary folk who find themselves faced with extraordinary circumstances and choose to rise to meet them. You may be only one small hobbit in a vast and dangerous world, but you have been chosen, whether by chance or design, you cannot say, to carry this knowledge. Perhaps Gandalf's meaningful glance in your direction wasn't entirely accidental after all. Perhaps there's a reason you decided to take this particular path tonight, at this particular time, to overhear this particular conversation. The fire has burned down to glowing coals and silver ash, but warmth still radiates from the hearthstones, accumulated over the long hours of the evening. Outside your window, the Shire continues its ancient rhythms, unchanged and unchanging, despite the momentous words you've heard spoken over its sleeping form. The party tree still spreads its ancient branches protectively over the heart of Hobbiton. The bywater pool still reflects the stars in its dark mirror, and somewhere in the distance, the water runs on toward the sea, singing its eternal song to the night. You rise from your chair with a decision crystallizing in your mind and move to the window that looks out over the moonlit landscape. The rolling hills stretch away into silvery darkness, holding secrets you may never know and dangers you can't even imagine. But they also hold something else, the enduring strength of this good earth, the resilience of growing things, and the quiet courage of those who choose to tend their gardens even when storm clouds gather on the horizon. Tomorrow, you decide you will go about your daily business as you always have. You'll tend your plants with the same care, visit your neighbors with the same warmth, perhaps stop by the Green Dragon for a pint and a bit of conversation, just as you have done countless times before. To all outward appearances, you'll be the same reliable, unremarkable hobbit you've always been. But beneath that familiar surface, you'll be watching and listening with new awareness. You'll pay closer attention to strangers on the road, to unusual birds that might be carrying messages, to changes in the wind that might herald news from the outside world. And if the time comes when this knowledge you carry becomes important, if the ring and its bearer truly do emerge from whatever shadows have concealed them, you'll be ready to play whatever part destiny has assigned you in the great story that seems to be unfolding. The thought brings with it a strange sort of peace, settling over your troubled mind like a warm blanket on a cold night. You've always been content with your small life in your small corner of the world, finding joy and meaning in simple pleasures and everyday kindnesses. But tonight has shown you that even the smallest lives can touch the greatest events. That significance is not measured by the size of one S stage, but by the depth of one S response to whatever role fate provides. The Shire may seem insignificant to those who deal in the affairs of kings and wizards, to those who think in terms of armies and kingdoms, and the rise and fall of great powers. But you know better now. You've always known in your heart of hearts that this is where true courage lives, not in grand gestures and heroic speeches, but in the simple decision to keep going, to keep caring, to keep hope alive, even when darkness presses close on every side. You make yourself a cup of tea, adding a generous dollop of honey from your own beehives and a splash of cream from Mrs. Whitfoot's prize cow. The familiar ritual soothes your jangled nerves, grounding you once again in the simple, tangible pleasures that make life worth living. The warm ceramic mug feels solid and real in your hands, the sweet liquid warming you from the inside out as you sip it slowly, mindfully, savoring each taste as if you've never experienced tea before. As you drink, you allow yourself to imagine that perhaps the worst of what you overheard will never come to pass. Perhaps Gandalf's wisdom and patience will prevail over Saruman's more aggressive approach. Perhaps the ring, whatever and wherever it might be, will remain safely hidden from those who would use it for ill. Perhaps the Shire will continue to exist as it always has. A green and pleasant haven where the most pressing concerns are the weather S effect on the harvest, and whether the Sackville Bagginses will manage to invite themselves to yet another family celebration. But even if those hopes prove false, even if dark times are indeed coming to the Shire and to all the lands beyond, you know now that you won't face them unprepared or unaware. The knowledge you carry may be a burden, but it's also a gift of sorts. You've been granted a glimpse behind the curtain of ordinary existence, and that glimpse has shown you both the terrible fragility and the extraordinary resilience of the world you love. The tea warms you thoroughly, and gradually, your eyelids begin to grow heavy despite the momentous nature of the evening's events. Your comfortable chair by the dying fire calls to you with the promise of rest, offering comfort and peaceful dreams after this most extraordinary and troubling of nights. As you settle back into its familiar embrace, you allow your mind to drift towards sleep, knowing that whatever dreams may come, you'll wake tomorrow with your purpose renewed and your courage restored. The last thing you hear before sleep finally claims you is the sound of the night wind in the eaves of your home, gentle and constant as a lullaby sung by the Shire itself. It carries no whispered threats or dire prophecies now, only the eternal voice of this green and growing land, promising that no matter what storms may come, there will always be a place where the grass grows sweet and green, where hearth fires burn warm and welcoming, and where simple folk live simple lives with extraordinary grace and uncommon courage. And in that ancient promise carried on wind that has blown over these hills since before the first hobbits set foot in the Shire, you find the peace that has eluded you since you first glimpsed those tall figures in the moonlit field. Whatever the future holds, whatever role you may be called to play in the great events stirring beyond your comfortable borders, you are still and always a child of this place. That heritage is both your anchor and your strength, the bedrock foundation upon which all else must build. The night embraces you like the arms of a loving parent, wrapping you in dreams of green hills, rolling away to distant horizons of golden lamplight, spilling from welcoming windows of laughter, echoing from the green dragon and wood smoke, rising from 100 chimneys scattered across the hillsides. In these dreams, the shadows hold no menace, the winds carry no threats, and the only rings that matter are the ones exchanged at weddings and given as tokens of friendship between neighbors who care for one another. But even in sleep, some watchful part of you remains alert, listening for changes in the night's familiar rhythm, ready to wake if the world should suddenly have need of one small hobbit who happened to be in the right place at the right time to overhear the conversation that changed everything. It's a responsibility you never asked for, but one you've accepted with the quiet determination that defines your people. For now, though, all is well in your small circle of the world. The Shire sleeps peacefully around you, its children safe in their beds, its gardens growing quietly in the silver moonlight, its ancient heart beating steady and strong beneath the surface of everyday concerns. And you sleep too, knowing that you've been entrusted with something precious, not just knowledge of what may come, but a deeper understanding of your own purpose in the grand tapestry of existence. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, the same stars that have watched over the Shire since its founding by the Falahide brothers. So many centuries ago, the same stars that will continue their patient vigil long after tonight. Revelations have played out to whatever conclusion awaits them. They've seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, the coming and going of ages, the endless cycle of darkness and light that defines the world's long, complex history. But they've also witnessed something else, something that perhaps matters more than all the great events, recorded in the history books, the enduring power of small kindnesses, simple courage, and quiet determination to do what's right regardless of the cost. They've watched ordinary folk rise to meet extraordinary challenges, not because they sought greatness or glory, but because greatness found them and they chose not to turn away from it. Tonight, those ancient stars look down on one more such soul, a hobbit who went out to gather apples and came home carrying the weight of destiny. The knowledge you bear may seem too heavy for your small shoulders, but the stars have seen your kind before, and they know the strength that lies hidden in even the most unlikely hearts. They know that when the moment comes to choose between comfort and courage, between safety and service, you'll make the choice that honors both your heritage and your conscience. As the night deepens toward the small hours that precede dawn, the wind shifts slightly, bringing with it the distant scent of rain and the promise of a new day. Somewhere beyond the borders of the Shire great events, continue to stir wheels, continue to turn, and the future hangs in a balance that may depend on choices yet to be made by people who doan't yet know they'll be called upon to make them. But here, in this moment, in this place of love and safety and deep, abiding peace, all is as it should be. The lanterns burn low in their posts along the lanes, casting pools of warm light that push back the darkness and create islands of welcome in the night. The sound of a nightingale drifts through your window, pure and sweet as liquid silver poured into a crystal cup. And in homes throughout Hobbiton and Bywater, in all the scattered villages of the Shire, good folk sleep peacefully, trusting in the essential goodness of the world and the protection of those who watch over them with love. You are one of those watchers now, whether you chose the role or it chose you. The knowledge you carry makes you guardian as well as witness, protector as well as participant in whatever story is beginning to unfold. It's a responsibility that may never be acknowledged by those you protect, never rewarded by those who benefit from your vigilance. But it's no less important for its secrecy or its solitude. The fire dies completely to ash and cold stone, but the warmth it provided lingers in the room like a blessing, like the memory of embrace long after the arms have withdrawn. Your breathing deepens and slows, your muscles gradually relax, and slowly, inevitably, the extraordinary events of the evening begin to recede into the background of consciousness. They're still there, still real, still vitally important, but they no longer dominate your thoughts with their weight and urgency. Instead, other images fill your mind as sleep approaches. The first green shoots of spring pushing through winter hardened. Earth, the laughter of children, playing by the mill pond on summer afternoons. The satisfied glow on a baker's face as perfect loaves emerge, golden from the oven, the quiet contentment of neighbors sharing the day's small news over garden fences. These are the things truly worth preserving, worth protecting, worth fighting for if the need should ever arise. These simple joys and quiet pleasures that make up the real treasure of the Shire. Morning will come eventually, as it always has and always will, bringing with it new choices and new challenges, and perhaps new revelations about the great game being played beyond your borders. There will be decisions to make about what to do with the knowledge you now carry, how to prepare for possibilities you can barely imagine, whether to share your burden with others or bear it alone. But for now, in this perfect moment of peace balanced between revelation and action, between knowledge and innocence, you rest secure in the certainty that you are exactly where you need to be, carrying exactly the burden you were meant to bear, playing exactly the role that fate or providence or simple chance has assigned you in the vast story of the world. The Shire wraps around you like a cloak woven from starlight and growing things, its love and protection as tangible as the warm stone beneath your hearth or the solid earth beneath your garden. Whatever storms may come, whatever darkness may threaten from beyond the borders of all you've ever known, this place will endure. It has endured ice ages and dragon fire, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the passing of ages beyond counting. It will endure whatever comes next, and so will you, strengthened by the knowledge that even the smallest and most unlikely folk can make the greatest difference when the moment calls for courage. You are no longer just a hobbit of the Shire, content with your garden and your books and your comfortable routines. You are a keeper of secrets now, a guardian of hope, a small but vital thread in the great tapestry of events that will shape the future of Middle-earth. The night holds you gently in its embrace, a cradle woven from stars and soft wind, from familiar scents and comforting sounds and the eternal rhythms of a world at peace with itself. In this loving embrace, the weight of what you've learned begins its slow transformation from burden to purpose, from fear to determination, from helplessness to a quiet but unshakable resolve. You understand now that this knowledge was not given to you by accident. In a world where wizards can appear and disappear like morning mist, where ancient powers stir in distant lands, where rings of terrible power wait to be claimed by those brave enough or foolish enough to seek them, there are no true coincidences. Everything happens for a reason, even if that reason isn't immediately clear to mortal eyes. The conversation you overheard tonight was meant to be heard. The path you chose to take the moment you decided to linger behind the hedge. The exact positioning that allowed you to catch those crucial words. All of it was part of a pattern larger than your understanding, but not beyond your acceptance. You've been chosen to be a guardian of this knowledge, a keeper of secrets that may one day prove vital to the safety of everything you hold dear. As sleep finally begins to claim you in earnest, pulling you down into dreams deeper than the roots of the old forest, you find yourself thinking not of the dangers that may come, but of the strength that already exists in the Shire. The quiet courage of farmers who rise before dawn to tend their fields, knowing that their work feeds not just their own families, but their entire community. The steady determination of mothers who sit up all night with fevered children, never considering their vigil anything more than simple duty. The unshakable loyalty of friends who stand by each other through seasons of plenty and seasons of want. These are your people, and this is their strength. When the testing time comes, if it comes, they will not face it alone or unprepared. They will face it as they have faced every challenge in their long history, together, with stubborn determination and the kind of courage that does not announce itself with trumpets and banners, but simply endures. Day after day, season after season, generation after generation. In your dreams, you walk the familiar paths of the Shire, but now you see them with new eyes. Every hedgerow is a potential shelter, every hill a possible vantage point, every stream a source of fresh water that could sustain a community under siege. You re-not planning for war. The very idea seems foreign to everything the Shire represents. But you re-beginning to understand that even the most peaceful places must sometimes be prepared for the possibility of conflict. But more than that, you re-beginning to see the Shire as Gandalf must see it, not as a collection of quaint villages, populated by rustic folk who care only for their gardens and their meals, but as a repository of everything good and innocent and worth preserving in the world. A place where kindness is valued above cleverness, where courage is measured not by the number of foes defeated, but by the number of friends helped, where wisdom is found not in ancient books, but in the patient observation of seasons and growing things. This is what Saruman doesn't understand, what his cold calculations cannot account for. The Shire's strength doesn't lie in walls or weapons, or the kind of military might that impresses those who think in terms of conquest and domination. It lies in the bonds between neighbors, the shared understanding that everyone's well-being depends on everyone else's prosperity, the deep-rooted belief that the world is fundamentally good, despite the darkness that sometimes gathers at its edges. As the hours pass and your dreams deepen, you find yourself imagining conversations you might have with others who share your concerns. Not about the specific details of what you overheard. Some secrets are too dangerous to share casually, but about the need for watchfulness for paying attention to signs and changes that might herald trouble from the outside world. There's old Mungo Bracegirdle, who fought in the border wars decades ago and still keeps his sword sharp, though he claims it as only for cutting particularly stubborn roots in his garden. He would understand the need for vigilance without requiring explanations about wizards and rings of power. There's wise Bella Goodbody, whose network of correspondence throughout the Shire means she knows about everything that happens within 50 miles of Hobbiton almost before it happens. She could be trusted to watch for signs of unusual activity, strangers asking odd questions, disruptions to the normal patterns of life that might indicate outside interference. And there's young Tallman Cotton, whose curiosity about the world beyond the Shire has always set him apart from his more traditional neighbors. He reads every book he can find about distant lands and ancient history, and he might be the ideal person to help interpret signs and omens that would seem meaningless to others. But even as you plan these potential conversations, you realize that the greatest strength of your response will be its subtlety. The Shire's protection lies not in dramatic preparations, but in the gradual strengthening of bonds that already exist, the quiet encouragement of virtues that are already valued, the patient cultivation of wisdom that already grows in hobbit hearts like seeds waiting for the right season to sprout. Your dreams shift and flow like water, carrying you through landscapes both familiar and strange. Sometimes you're walking the well-known paths around Hobbiton, noting how the light falls differently now that you understand the shadows that may be gathering beyond the horizon. Sometimes you're re-standing in places you've then never seen, but somehow recognize. Great halls where the voices of the wise echo in discussion of matters that will shape the fate of nations. Dark towers where ancient evils plot the overthrow of everything good, and growing hidden valleys where the last remnants of elder days preserve secrets that may prove crucial when the final test comes. In one particularly vivid dream, you find yourself standing once again behind the hawthorn hedge, but this time you're not alone. Other figures crouch beside you in the shadows. Hobbits like yourself, but also men and elves, and even a dwarf or two, all united by the shared knowledge that great events are stirring, and that someone must bear witness to the conversations that will determine how those events unfold. In this dream, Gandalf turns toward your hiding place not with surprise or annoyance, but with something that might be gratitude. His eyes meet yours across the intervening space, and in them you see acknowledgement of the role you've chosen to play, acceptance of the burden you've agreed to bear. Without words, he communicates that the road ahead will be difficult, that choices will have to be made that no one wants to make, but that the presence of ordinary folk willing to do extraordinary things when necessity demands it gives him hope that the darkness will not prevail. When you wake, it's as to the sound of birds singing in the eaves outside your window, and the gentle light of dawn filtering through your curtains. For a moment, you lie still, caught between the world of dreams and the world of waking responsibility, trying to hold on to the sense of purpose and connection that filled your sleeping mind. Then memory returns in full, and with it the weight of knowledge that is now yours to carry. But somehow, in the clear light of morning, that weight feels less like a burden and more like a trust. You've been given something precious, not just information, but a role in the great story that seems to be beginning. It is a role that asks nothing more of you than to be exactly who you are, a hobbit of the Shire, with all the courage and wisdom and stubborn determination that heritage implies. You rise and go to your window, looking out over the familiar landscape that somehow seems both unchanged and utterly transformed by what you now know. The hills roll away toward the horizon in the same gentle curves they've held for thousands of years. The trees stand in their appointed places, their leaves catching the morning light in patterns of green and gold. Smoke rises from chimneys throughout Hobbiton as your neighbors begin their daily routines, unaware that their peaceful world has been discussed and debated by powers beyond their imagining. But you see it all with new eyes now. This isn't just a collection of pretty views and comfortable homes. This is a fortress, not built of stone and steel, but of love and loyalty and the kind of deep contentment that comes from knowing exactly where you belong in the world. It's a treasure worth protecting, a light worth preserving against whatever darkness may come. The day ahead stretches before you, full of ordinary tasks and familiar pleasures. You'll tend your garden, as you do every morning. You'll chat with your neighbors over the garden fence, sharing the small news that makes up the daily fabric of Shire life. You'll visit Mrs. Bracegirdle to collect those apples that started this whole adventure, and you'll thank her with genuine warmth for her generosity, knowing now that such simple kindnesses are more precious than she realizes. But underneath all these normal activities, you'll be watching and listening with new awareness. You'll pay attention to the quality of the light, the direction of the wind, the behavior of birds, and animals that might indicate changes coming from beyond the Shire's borders. You'll note who comes and goes on the roads, what news they bring, whether their presence represents simple business or something more significant. Most importantly, you'll cherish each moment of peace, each expression of contentment, each small joy that makes up the daily treasure of Hobbit life. Because now you understand how precious these things are, how fragile, how worthy of protection, regardless of the cost. As you dress and prepare for the day, you find yourself humming an old tune your grandmother used to sing, something about walking through dark places with light in your heart. The melody comes back to you as naturally as breathing, carrying with it the memory of her voice and the comfort of her presence during the uncertain years of your childhood. She would have understood what happened to you last night, you realize. She lived through the fell winter and the Battle of Greenfields, times when the Shire's isolation was pierced by events from the outside world. She knew that peace is not a gift freely given, but a treasure that must sometimes be defended by those brave enough to stand watch in the darkness. The song follows you as you make your breakfast and tend your fire and go about all the small rituals that begin each day. It's a simple melody, but it carries complex truths about courage and endurance in the strange ways that ordinary folk sometimes find themselves, called to play parts in extraordinary stories. And as you step out your door into the fresh morning air, basket once again swinging from your arm, you carry with you not just the memory of last night's revelations, but the deeper understanding they've brought. You are no longer just a hobbit of the Shire. You are a guardian now, a keeper of secrets, a thread in the great tapestry of events that will shape the future. The path to Mrs. Bracegirdle's homestead beckons, the same path you walked last evening in innocence and will walk this morning in knowledge. But you are ready for whatever may come, strengthened by the certainty that you are exactly where you need to be, carrying exactly the burden you were meant to bear. The Shire awakens around you, in all its green and golden glory, unaware of the conversation that took place beneath its stars, unconscious of the forces that may soon test its ancient peace. But it awakens to another day of your watchfulness, another day of your protection, another day of your quiet determination to preserve everything that makes it worthy of love. And in that preservation, in that patient guardianship, lies perhaps the greatest magic of all, the power of ordinary folk to do extraordinary things simply because they choose to care about something larger than themselves. Until our paths cross again beneath the party tree, dear traveler, may your own secrets find their proper guardians, and may the Shire always be here to welcome you home when the watching is done.